to Something for the Turbo, the new weekly podcast brought to you by Unfound, the global platform for the travel-loving cyclist. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again. If you've been enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe and tell all your cycling friends, and of course download the Unfound app and join our global community of travel-loving cyclists. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Stu Bowers. Stu was an elite mountain biker and cyclocross racer, competing as a pro and representing Team GB in both disciplines. He was also a team mechanic for the British team before becoming the technical specialist for Cycling Weekly. 8 years ago, he joined the team that launched Cyclist Magazine as their deputy editor. And last year, he launched their new Cyclist Off Road publication, where he is the editor. He's traveled the world racing, creating some amazing cycling content, riding some of the coolest bikes there are to ride. And we chat all that and a load more. So let's crack on with it. Stu, thank you very much for joining us. How are you getting on?
Good, thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, for a lot of us, lockdown has meant that we haven't been working and it's been a bit quieter, but you've been as busy as ever from what I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cycling industry is definitely not taking a back step through lockdown. In fact, it's probably the reverse. Everything seems to have gone into overdrive with a massive sort of boom in interest in bikes from the sort of mass participation side of things. Obviously, the racing side of things has had to completely be curtailed.
Yeah.
But that's a separate entity, I guess. But no, on the whole, we're super busy. I mean, the magazine is still going out there on the shelves, and our website and all that stuff is still, super hungry for information. So in terms of my job, tons of work to do still. So
tons of stuff to keep you out of trouble. Well, even more, thank you then for taking the time to join us. So before we crack on to the magazine and where we're at with stuff now, let's go back a bit. Talk us through your background as a cyclist, when you got into it, and when you realised you're pretty good at it as well.
Oh man, well, I hope we got a while. It's a long story. I'll try and keep it the abridged version, shall we say. I've always been into bikes, I guess, even as a kid. Like my father was big into motocross, and that was the first little inkling that I was into push bikes. Was that when I got to an age where I would have been sort of the ideal kid to get into motocross. It was in the 80s. Dad was a self-employed builder. And of course, in the recession, he had no work, no money. So motocross was off the table as an expensive hobby. So along came mountain bikes. And I got given a mountain bike and off I went and entered some races, realised I was going to be all right at it, and just sort of carried on with it from there. And since then, I've been in all sorts of different race teams and sponsored by a few different brands over the years and stuff. But
yeah, definitely. Before we go on to that, though, there is definitely a connection with cycling and motocross, isn't there? Have you raced cross since, or that was your dad's thing? And did you get into it a little bit later?
I did, yeah. I mean, it sadly took a divorce and the sale of a joint house to get me there. But
Okay.
For another day and another over a couple of beers maybe. But no, essentially, I mean, I ended up with a little bit of cash from the settlement of a house, and I thought, you know what, this is my opportunity. I've always had that kind of in my blood, and so I often bought an enduro bike, actually, a Honda CRF 250, and got into enduro probably about 10 years ago now, and never looked back really. I adore motocross racing and enduro racing, and I follow it fanatically, particularly the Supercross in the US. That's a different side to me. It gets me away from push bikes, so to speak, but still two wheels.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I've got a couple of old teammates as well that were came up through cross, and obviously I had Jacob Hennessy on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you've heard that, but he basically never ridden a gear bike till he was 19, and then was in the British squad within 12 months. But he'd come up through the motocross background. That was his background as an athlete, his athletic background.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of being athletes, I think these guys are often they're overshadowed in, they talk about athletes and people being fit in various other sports, but these guys are absolute machines. I mean, particularly, I think a lot of the documentaries I've watched on the Supercross guys, I mean, that sport is brutal. And motocross in general is brutal. And what their bodies are going through out there when they're on the track. And, sometimes they pop up some of the heart rate data and stuff when you're watching the races, and these guys are running at obscene heart rates, like in the 190s for the whole moto. They're just absolutely like killing it. And you watch some of the training they do and the hours they put in. Those guys are probably some of the fittest athletes on the planet, I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I have to say, until I spoke to Jake a couple of weeks ago, I really didn't appreciate that. I think as someone who hasn't grown up with motorbikes or been into it, it's easy just to not appreciate just how athletic these guys are.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, obviously, I'm not racing at a high level. I just do it for fun. But I would say hand on heart, I've done a lot of different sports in my life, and I can go and do a 300-kilometer sportive or whatever, and yeah, you're going to be exhausted in one sense from that. But what I find with the motorbike stuff is just how much whole body it is. Every bit of me hurts. I mean, sometimes at the end of a long enduro, I've had to get someone to help me take my boots off. You're just physically that broken.
Really?
After 3 hours of holding on to that beast in the woodlands and what have you, it's a tough sport. But that, in a way, is another crossover to cycling. I guess,
yeah.
As cyclists, we love that pain. We thrive on that difficulty and the physical suffering that we go through. People love that, and for me, that's definitely a big part of the enjoyment of enduro as well. Yeah, it's a lovely feeling to wake up on a Monday morning, and that sounds a bit sadistic, but to feel like you've just been hit by a lorry. That's something that only I think cyclists get that. It's.
I think we do. We've digressed a little bit, so I've taken you away from mountain biking. So that was your first sort of racing. You had some success on the mountain bike, and then you took us through that, and then you raced cross at the same time, or you then moved over to cross. How did that work?
Well, it was actually cross that I did first. I mean, where I live, there was a local cyclocross scene, and I raced a cyclocross bike. It was my first ever off-road race, and actually within the first sort of 6 months of me starting racing, I entered the schoolboy national championships, as it was then, and I won the under 15s category or whatever, and that was the real spark then to think, well, hang on, I've only been doing this sport a short while, and I just won the schoolboy national championships, and
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's progressed from there. As I've been very fortunate over the years to have a bit of support from brands and other sponsors, and managed to pick my way through the different age categories and eventually race at an elite level, and that sort of went on to riding for Great Britain in cyclocross and mountain bike for me, which was an amazing privilege and took me to some great places around the world riding my bike as well, which was awesome.
Yeah, amazing. Get to travel with it as well. And how has the sport domestically here in the UK grown since you were coming through as a junior and with the national team?
In some ways, I look back on what I did with cycling, and there's a slight element of jealousy. I'll be honest. I feel like if I could have achieved all the things I did and the results that I got as a bike rider now, that maybe would have changed my career pathway completely. Because ultimately, when I was an up and coming rider, there was no funding, there was no mountain biking was almost an unheard of sport. Cyclocross too, to be honest, it was a very, very poor discipline. There was hardly any money and funding coming from British cycling in those days, because there was none of that lottery support that we've had since, and all the sort of big input from big name sponsors that you have now, and there was no kind of youth development programs and all that stuff that's in place now to spot talent early and get riders on the schemes and really push them forward with proper coaching and help and so on. None of that really existed when I was young. I mean, I'm coming up 44 soon, so we're talking about 25 years ago now.
Yeah. So
that, in a way, I kind of feel it's fantastic that the youngsters now have got that network of support in place. But yeah, hey ho.
And on the mountain bike side, did you ever come across James Sutton?
James Sutton, yes, indeed I did. I raced with James bits and bobs because he was from the south as well. I'm from the south of England, so yeah, I know James. Yeah, vaguely.
It's a small world. He's a great friend and a teammate over in Hong Kong. I've raced with him for the last few years over there.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, very. So we digress a little bit. So obviously, and I spoke to you. Must know Chris McNamara as well, do you?
Oh yeah,
we had him. Chris on the podcast.
Yeah, Chris is a good man from cycling. But also, oddly, I met Chris first from, I was searching for subjects for my university dissertation, which was essentially based around bike fitting, which is a topic which, I'd studied, and that was something I was quite passionate about back then. And Chris was one of the volunteers that came into the lab to be one of my lab rats for my dissertation. So that's where I first met Chris, and
interesting.
Racing over the years since. But
because you did sports science, didn't you? That was your...
I did, yeah. Really? Yeah, that was kind of my into journalism, weirdly, but that's another slightly convoluted story. But I did sports science, and my area of interest within that was definitely biomechanics and physiology. And because I was obviously racing at a reasonable level myself then as an athlete, so I was really into learning about what was going on in my body and how maybe I could use that knowledge to improve my own performances and so on. So yeah, I really studied bike fit, biomechanics of cycling, and also physiology.
And that was kind of at the forefront of that. I suppose that was just coming into vogue at that time, I suppose, when you were studying.
It was kind of unheard of, actually, then.
Yeah.
And again, in hindsight, it's almost like I was studying something which I didn't really know the importance of at that time. I was at university in 96 through to 99, and my undergraduate dissertation was essentially to build a bike fitting ergometer, so a bike which you could adjust in every possible way, change the handlebars, change the seat, the pedals and all that stuff, so that the athletes coming into the lab weren't just stuck on one of these kind of exercise bike style rigs, which were the ergometers of that day, which is something that I very much, obviously I was being tested as an athlete myself, and you go into these labs and get wired up to all these machines, and you ride this horrible thing with these big cow horn handlebars with this blue plastic coating on them, and you're just trying to go to your maximum and never really feeling like it was happening, because you're just like, this bike doesn't feel like a bike to me. And so that was kind of where that came from. And when you think back now, like, to how important and how much emphasis now is placed on bike fitting, but ultimately that kind of helped me in my pathway, because through the knowledge I gained there, I ended up doing bike fitting in retailing off the back of that. And then long and short of that was how I sort of found my way into journalism, through being the one of the expert panel for Cycling Weekly. They had this weekly questionnaire part of the magazine, which was Ask the Expert. And so any sort of bike fit related questions were coming through to me. I just started answering those questions, and that sort of snowballed into becoming more and more and more. And then that's, here I am.
The rest of history. That's fascinating. So somewhere along there, you ended up working with British Cycling as well, from a mechanic's perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess that just came off the back of having ridden GB cyclocross. Okay. I've always been a very technical person and very mechanically minded. And I'd worked in bicycle retail as well. So it just sort of happened, really. I just sort of fell into it. They asked me for some help at one of the World Championships many years ago, and they were short of hands, and they knew I was a good mechanic and said, would I do it? And then, that sort of, it ended up being something I did for about the next 4 or 5 years, going to various World Cups or World Championships and just helping out it was a part-time thing. It was never a full-time job, but something I very much enjoyed. I loved that, getting involved. And being up to my knees in mud and jet washing riders' bikes, and the kind of stress and adrenaline of the speed of cyclocross. And it's great.
Yeah, a lot of fun. There isn't much you haven't done, really, is there? In the cycling world?
I have bounced around the bike industry in various roles, it could be said, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So your foray into journalism was obviously with Cycling Weekly. And when did you join Cyclist Magazine, and tell us about that journey and to where you're at the moment?
Well, I was actually contacted by someone at Dennis Publishing, and they said, they're thinking of starting a cycling magazine. Would I be interested in being part of the editorial team? And had a few meetings, and it was a transition which at the time was a good one for me. The product seemed really exciting, what they were offering, and just to have that blank canvas. I mean, if I'm honest, the thing with Cycling Weekly is it was a kind of set in stone magazine. It was an institution almost when I worked there. It's such a big thing, and each week you were basically just filling a template. The magazine was the magazine, and you just pop your content in and away you go. And when you're trying to pump out a magazine every week, it's understandable why it's that way. But to go to Cyclist and have this freedom of, like, we've got this monthly magazine and we can pretty much just flat plan it how we want every month, and all these amazing feature opportunities and things we could do with it. And it just seemed like too good opportunity to miss. And I've been there now just over 8 years. So
8 years, and because you just had that, was it the 100th edition? Was that right?
Yeah, we're actually press 103 now, so the months are ticking on by. But just before lockdown was issue 100.
Yeah,
right on the cusp of lockdown, actually, and that was challenging in itself, because we had some special stuff happening around issue 100. So that was when our workload was probably at its biggest, right at the point when we're all told to leave the office. So
So that 8-year journey, I mean, a lot has happened in that time, not only within cycling, but also within the sort of print press. Talk us through the journey and the growth, and how you grew the business, and then subsequent challenges that you've had along the way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, print stuff has definitely suffered over in that time scale. Yeah, that's undoubted. That's for sure. But I think our product is protected by two things. One, standing alone in its own little space in the market, I think, is the first thing. I mean, the product we make is quite a premium look and feel, and the content is very much driven towards the kind of reader experience, in terms of we write these features, we go to all these amazing places around the world, and we write these features in a kind of first person present tense, so that puts the reader actually there with you almost, and it's a different way of presenting this stuff to what the other magazines do. So I think in the way that we present Cyclist is it keeps it separate, and therefore we've got our sort of core readership and a good following that's stayed loyal to us through, and that's helped in times when you've seen other print titles, their sales are falling off a cliff, some of them, if I'm honest. And although we've seen a decline, obviously we would, but our decline has been much more controlled and much more steady. So I feel like our product is a little bit more, kind of got a bit more longevity because of what it is. Yeah,
and for those of you listening that haven't picked up a Cyclist Magazine, firstly do, or subscribe, and we'll put all the notes as ever in the show notes. But it is just the feel and dare I say it, bizarrely, the smell and the feel of the publication is that sort of quality. And there's just magnificent images in there as well, and some great articles, and a lot of focus around travel.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are the things that inspire people. That we spend a huge amount of our investment is on, like, as you just pointed out, the photography, just so that a reader picks up that magazine and opens that page and just go, wow, I'd love to go and ride there. And then hopefully, realize that it's not that difficult to take your bike and go to all these amazing places. Actually, these days it's all feasible. So just inspiring people to look, broaden their horizons, and get out on bikes and go and do some cool stuff like we have.
Which is what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And do you get to travel a lot with the articles as well? You get to put your hand up and say that I'll go to X destination and write that for you. Is that the perk of the job?
That is, for sure. It's a real perk of the job. I mean, that's something that you really, I guess you take it for granted when you've been doing it perhaps as long as I have, but then certainly lockdown has really made me aware of how much I miss having that ability to go to places on my bike and make these features happen. But yeah, sometimes in the office there's a little bit of infighting about who gets to go to these places. But it's all good. We all get to go to different locations around the world, and we split up the workload accordingly, so you win some, you lose some, kind of.
Yeah, of course. Actually, that's a good point. I haven't really thought about that. That must be a challenge with regards to lockdown. From a content perspective, you haven't been able to travel. Did you guys have stuff in the diary that's had to be cancelled, obviously, and how are you getting on with the content creation piece?
Yeah, heaps of stuff has had to be canned because of this, but that is what it is. But luckily with Cyclist, because we have been going now for 100 issues plus, obviously you generate a little bit of a bank of stock almost. That's something which we've been able to fall back on. We've got ride features in the bank and sportive features in the bank, and so maybe some interviews and all that stuff, which is waiting in the wings. It's not like we have tons of this content. There definitely is some need to get out and start building content again. But with Cyclist for sure, there was features to pull and fall back on. Cyclist Off Road, on the other hand, to just throw that one into the balance. That's
yeah, for sure. I'm definitely keen to hear about that. But I just want to go back to Cyclist really quickly. Of the 100 and so publications that you've been involved in, where are your favourite places that you visited to go write about, or favourite events? What are your kind of key highlights from the 8 years so far?
Oh man, there've been lots. I think from a personal level, I'm very drawn to Colorado. I've done a few really good features out there for various things that we've done with the mag, either brand-based stuff or event-based. And I just love Boulder in particular. Is one of my favorite places on earth. Every time I visited Boulder, I've always come away thinking, God, I could move here like in a heartbeat. It's such a cool place. Yeah, people watching in Boulder is an interesting experience. I look around and pretty much everyone you see just looks like they're about to go running into the mountains or go climbing or go mountain biking or they're loading up some motorbikes into the back of their pickup to take them off into the countryside or something. Yeah, there's just this amazing vibe in Boulder, a very outgoing, outdoorsy, cool. It's a great city, or town. That's certainly high on my list. Other places, maybe like Morocco as well. I think one of my best ever experiences on a bike was riding across Morocco and doing some stuff on a feature out there where you're just in the middle of nowhere in these little villages, and then kids from the local school would see this cyclist coming along the road, and they'd all run out to the roadside and they'd be there with their hands up, wanting to do high fives as you came through the little village. And like that, it's hard to put into words how cool that is, so it's such varied experiences that we've had creating the content that we've done over those 100 issues. And I'm sure all of my colleagues would say exactly the same. We've been, up mountains in Bhutan. We've been in the, remote areas in Brazil and Colombia, and been all over and created some amazing stuff, which we're very privileged to be able to do that. And enjoy creating things with bikes.
Absolutely, yeah. Something obviously setting up Unfound I'm very passionate about as well. I think there's just no better way to see the world than on a bike. And to your point about the sort of communities and people rushing out, I just love going to new places and meeting new people, and the bike's just a great way to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you just see these cultures as well. Again, to use Morocco as an example, sometimes you might be picked up from an airport by, I don't know, a posh Mercedes Vito minibus, and you get a guy take your bike bag off you, and everything will be super luxurious, and you go to this lovely hotel and blah blah blah. And that's one side, and then another side might be that you get picked up in this rickety old vehicle and driven back to this place where you have no idea where you're going sometimes. And I remember distinctly in Morocco, we pulled up in this sort of location, and this guy with a what looked like a giant wheelbarrow basically just appeared out of this little alleyway and just took our bike bags out of the back of the van and chucked them in the back of this like big wheelbarrow and then just toddled off with them. And I was like, oh, are we supposed to follow him? But yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, that's cool. And you mentioned earlier briefly, and I cut you off very rudely, but tell us now about your new brainchild or your new publication, Cyclist Off Road. How did that come about and when did it launch?
Okay, so yeah, we launched Off-Road back in the spring last year, and just purely as an answer to this massively growing sector of the industry, really.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of growth. It's probably other than e-bikes, maybe the biggest growing area of cycling right now. And brands are pumping a lot of resources and energy into that right now. And it seemed like there was no vehicle for anyone to put this content out there. And we were getting more and more gravel, for one, I'm not sure if I like that term even, but gravel products, gravel bikes and kit and so on being sort of pushed towards cyclists. And at some point we had to say, look, we're diluting our road product by putting more and more of the gravel stuff in it. So therefore, why don't we give it its own voice? And that's kind of, just where it came from, really. We just decided to go all in and make a magazine, and we did in a time when print is, as we said earlier, having a hard time. So it was a kind of a brave move, but Off-Road has been really well received. It's currently only 2 issues a year, so we do a spring one and then a late summer one, so it's March and September split. Although that may going forward that may change, it may become more, hopefully. It continues to grow, but it's exciting. It's another whole world of exploration that opens up. Roads only take you so far. I've just been writing a feature with a colleague about something on the Col de Tourmalet, which is coming up in an upcoming issue, about how the road stops at the place where the pass crosses over on the tarmac, and everyone thinks that's the summit of the Tourmalet, and that's what they talk about. But actually, if you make a left turn there's a gravel road that goes up another 600 vertical meters to the top of the Pic du Midi. There's a gravel just opens up these opportunities that you don't always get on a road bike. So it's, in terms of exploration for us and more new topics to cover, more new places to go. It's just heaps of cool, exciting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, certainly. I think we've heard already through your career, you've kind of been ahead of the curve in a lot of different things that you've got yourself into. But I think that just with the growth, it's such an interesting topic. I think there's definitely, even with lockdown, just people looking for something a little bit different. And Gravels certainly is answering that, even with regards to just getting off the roads from a car perspective or danger perspective. But just that exploration thing, it sort of ticks that box. And it's just brilliant to see riders like Mathieu van der Poel, and the diversification of cycling across discipline as well is just great to see.
Yeah, and the point you made there really hit the nail on the head. And that I think is getting off the roads and getting away from traffic. And that is such an appealing thing on a bike. I think for my little Ed's letter piece that I wrote in the last issue of Off-Road, I kind of touched on that when I kind of said about I can't remember the last time I actually had a proper sociable road ride. Yeah. You socialise at the end of the road ride at the CAF, or if you have a cafe stop halfway round or whatever. But actually, whilst you're on a road bike, most of the time now it feels like you're strung out in single file, and your communication with the riders around you is to point out potholes or shout there's a car coming or whatever. And then I've had business meetings with clients and brands and what have you on gravel bikes recently, where we've gone out. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I live in the New Forest, and there's just mile after mile after mile of gravel trails that I can ride. And we can go and ride 2, 3, 4 abreast on a gravel road. We can chat freely. There's no cars, there's no distractions, no danger. And you can ride like that for hours on end. And for me, that was a real kind of like a realization of the step change that gravel offers you as a rider over going out in groups on the road, where you're just basically inciting the rage of motorists at any point when you ride 2 abreast or in a group.
Yeah, which I think kind of got worse off the back of lockdown. I think drivers seem to be a little bit angrier. Certainly in the UK, anyway.
Definitely, yeah. My wife actually got spat at by a guy who, because it was in the early stage of the lockdown, and there was that whole backlash against, well, cyclists aren't obeying the rules, they're still going out riding their bike. And even though my wife had only gone on a short ride, locally, some motorists decided to take offence at the fact that she was out riding her bike when she maybe should have been not, at home, which wasn't the case. Obviously, she was perfectly within her rights to be out for a ride for an hour or so. But there was a huge amount of backlash. I heard of another incident as well with another local rider that got knocked into the curb. A motorist came alongside, got angry that he was out riding during the lockdown period, and actually forced him left until he hit the curb and fell off. So there's some awful stories of just bad vibes between cyclists and motorists. But you're right. I think on the whole, that relationship is a difficult one to repair. It's not in a good place.
No, absolutely. And I'm assuming the magazine is covering some of just the boom in events globally at the moment. It's these gravel events. Which ones have you covered? Which ones are you going to be covering? And what should everyone be looking out for in terms of gravel events that seem to be popping up everywhere at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's heaps to choose from. I mean, we've covered the classic ones, if you like, the Dirty Kansas, the Dirty Reavers, and the ones which the obvious ones, if you like. And then you've got other stuff like Transcontinental, which is not specifically a gravel event, but it's more of that kind of big bikepacking adventure race. Those are becoming huge as well.
To get there, I mean, so bikepacking as well. Do you cover that as part of the magazine? Because I really feel that there's a big acceleration into just getting out for bikepacking adventures as well.
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful areas within the gravel bike topic, if you like. I mean, as I say, gravel is a bit of a weird kind of embrace all word that they use for this new generation or this new era of cycling or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, within there, definitely bikepacking is a big deal. I mean, lots of companies now have got some really cool bags that can, basically go on any bike. So it's not like the old days where you had to have big, heavy pannier racks and panniers and things like that. You've got these super lightweight bags that can hang off various bits and areas of the bike, and you can be free to go and make your own adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people that haven't quite discovered gravel yet or are thinking about getting into it, what can you tell them in terms of equipment they need and how they can find routes, and what advice would you give to people that are curious about the sort of growing movement?
I would say best piece of advice I could give anyone would be to just not overthink it in the early stages. Like you don't have to travel to the ends of the earth to have a really good adventure. I think you could go probably within 50 kilometers maximum of your house, and most people within that kind of circumference could find somewhere where they could have a great experience on a bike and even stay out overnight under the stars or whatever it is they want to do. So yeah, you don't need to fly to Timbuktu to have a really cool bikepacking or gravel adventure. There is stuff on our doorstep, and we've got features based around that concept coming up in upcoming issues to try and sort of just sow that seed into people's mind that you don't have to go to far-flung places in the far corners of the earth. The other thing would be to not go too heavy on the equipment. It's interesting when you talk to the people that actually do these huge events like the Transcon or the Tour Divide, things like that. I had a really nice interview with Josh Ibbott, who was one of the top placed finishers in the Tour Divide race across the Rockies, and he specifically said how he started out with all this kit, and gradually the more he's done it, the more and more stuff he's decided not to bring. And actually sometimes it's better to take less and just enjoy it for what it is, and don't try to take everything in the kitchen sink. So just simplify it, I guess, is what I'm saying. Keep it local, keep what you're trying to achieve simple, and you can still have a really cool fun experience.
Yeah, keep it inclusive. It's kind of the whole gravel movement's got a nice vibe to it as well. It's sort of friendly and exclusive. I think road cycling has a bad reputation at times historically around maybe being slightly pretentious at times, but gravel certainly at the moment seems very inclusive, and which is what we like to see, right?
Definitely. I would agree that there are certain areas of road cycling that can be a bit stuffy and a bit cliquey, but I think that's probably a generalization. I think most road clubs are quite welcoming. Certainly where I live, I wouldn't say there was any road clubs that aren't sort of would welcome new members and would make someone feel welcome and included and so on. But you're right. There's definitely a bit like I guess it comes from the mountain bike vibe. There was always that was always the analogy between road and mountain bike back in the early 90s. The mountain bikers were kind of viewed as like hippies that were just relaxed and chilled, and the roadies were all a bit more serious, and they'd be shaving their legs and all that kind of stuff and getting their massages before their events, and the mountain bikers were probably down the pub having a last beer. But I think that has kind of moved across a little bit to the gravel side, in so much that you probably, almost to use the beer example there, you probably would feel comfortable on a gravel ride stopping in a pub for lunch and having a beer, because that's the kind of mentality of it. You probably find less roadies that would do that. They might stop for an espresso, but less so the kind of. But that's because I think it's probably a bit of a generalisation, but most road guys are probably a little bit more focused on the performance data. They've got a target that they want to hit, a certain distance maybe, or to the even more serious guys, it might be a certain power output or whatever it is they're trying to achieve. Whereas I think as a broader sort of message for the gravel market, it's more a case that your goal for the day is just to go out and ride your bike. So it doesn't matter if you
start out all day or long as short as you want. It's less about power numbers and more. Actually, it's more about, a lot of it's about distance, right? Obviously, Unfound as a platform, we're kind of a social media platform for cyclists, and just popping on today, more and more gravel rides being posted on there. And one of our members today posted a new event in Oslo, in just outside Oslo, the Oslo Gravel Grinder, 259 kilometers with 6,000 meters of climbing, 90% on gravel, just outside Oslo. It took nearly 17 hours to do it. So, I mean, that's a full fun day out, isn't it? I mean, what does it, not fun in inverted commas, but I mean, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to give that a crack.
Yeah, I think they call that type 2 fun, don't they? So
yeah, exactly that. But
yeah,
that's what I mean. It offers something a little bit different, doesn't it?
Yeah, and weirdly, that mentality that we spoke about earlier on, the slightly sadistic mental side to cycling that we have, where if you make an event brutally hard, that seems to be the ones that attract the most people. You know, it's crazy that 260 k's off road in a day is a big ask of anybody, even a very, very fit, elite level athlete. That's a huge ask. So but those are the events that get the numbers. People want to challenge themselves. They want to feel what it's like to go to breaking point and sometimes beyond. And yeah,
that's what I don't know. Sure, do you know Ryan Steers, the gravel and mountain biker in the US?
Yeah, name rings a bell. Yeah, for sure. I don't know him, but
we had him on the podcast, and I think we're talking with Chris as well. Maybe the movement as well with the aging cyclist as well. As you get a little bit older, your sort of crit racing days, your top end power might be sort of petering out. But these long gravel events, you've still got a good engine. You can still do pretty well in and have a great day out at. And certainly following him at Dirty Kansas a couple of years ago, the wheels came off. I think he was in like 6th place after 100 miles. I was following him from Hong Kong, and then the wheels slowly came off for the second 100 miles. So yeah, so it has that appeal in terms of getting a little bit older and still being able to challenge yourself and being competitive as well.
It does, for sure. And there's plenty of examples of ex-pros from the Pro Tour Peloton, World Tour Peloton, who have sort of come to the end of their useful life within the race teams and have found their place riding gravel events. And there are other riders like Lachlan Morton who just go off and do their own thing and have probably created a huge amount of social following for themselves based on what they've done on gravel, more so than they would have done as a professional bike racer, as a domestique, sort of almost anonymously within the Grand Tours and so on. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, and another one that comes to mind is Ted King. He was a World Tour rider for many years, and then he pops up winning Dirty Kansas, and you think, wow, for these guys, as you rightly said, they've got massive engines from all these years of riding thousands and thousands of kilometers, a month or whatever, and those engines haven't disappeared. And the beauty of gravel is that so much of that is still relevant. It's not quite so technical as mountain biking, so the transition is easier to things like the Dirty Kansas and so on. So yeah, definitely there's a trend of that happening.
Yeah, of course. And where do you see, obviously we're seeing some fantastic tech on the gravel side coming through and the off-road side coming through. Where do you see that evolution going on the gravel side? Do you see, obviously I think we're seeing a little bit of suspension coming in now. Do you think it depends on the terrain? What are your views on the tech? Where can you see that going over the next few years?
I think it'll be a really interesting journey for the next couple of years. Oddly, I'm actually I'm sitting in my garage as we speak, because this is now my little office while we're in lockdown, because my wife also has to work in the house. So I'm sitting in my garage at the moment. I'm actually looking at the Niner MCR RDO, which is the full suspension bike that they brought out recently. And that bike has been quite a divisive bike, because it is, visually, it's very much like a full suspension mountain bike with a full-on shock system in the rear and a Fox suspension fork as well. And it's definitely prompted a lot of debate about, does suspension have a place in gravel? And there's also Cannondale have just launched a lefty gravel fork. Stone carbon. So yeah, there's definitely really cool and exciting tech that's coming into gravel. And personally, I think what will happen is we'll see a big influx of new tech, and things will probably go a little bit sort of beyond where we need. And then I think we'll see it sort of peg back slightly, and we'll land somewhere, back maybe nearer the middle point. Because I do think at the moment there's a tendency to overthink the gravel, and some of the stuff that's coming out is probably a bit overkill. But overall, I'll never be down on someone who innovates. I think fair play. Cycling is such an exciting sport. Why not just push the boundaries a little bit and come up with these wacky ideas? And hey, they don't all have to work. I think back to the launch of the Trek de Marne, when they first came on board with that bike, and that was the first time we'd ever seen a road bike with a sort of linkage system in there, which gave you some sort of suspension in the back end. And yeah, that was madness at the time. You're just thinking like, wow, like thinking really outside the box with how they achieved that. And actually that bike has become a stalwart of the Trek range now. It's really stood the test of time, and they've developed that idea and that concept on to, into other areas of the range as well. And I just think, fair play to Trek for being ballsy enough to try that kind of stuff. So, I'll never be down on a brand for bringing out new ideas and new technology, and some of them will be a bit wacky and they'll probably get a bit of bad press because people will be negative about it, but ultimately it's all good. It all helps us to ride and have fun, and
yeah, exactly. It's such a difficult balancing act for the bike brands, isn't it, in terms of creating new innovation. Obviously there's a marketing and sales element to that as well, but within an industry where margins are so extremely tight, cycling is growing, but it's such a difficult balancing act for the big bike brands, isn't it, or all bike brands.
Yeah, it is, but those guys know what they're doing. Kind of in my head, what you're saying there is there a risk element to bringing out these new ideas in that, it could potentially kill a brand if something that they do doesn't work. But I don't think there's a risk of that per se. These guys are hugely experienced in what they're doing. And there's very little doubt that the big brands particularly are, they know the market, they've researched this thoroughly. And it's, as I said, I think personally it'd be very hard to do a brand down for just trying something new and getting ideas out there.
Yeah, I meant almost the other way. Like it's difficult. I'm sure they've got loads of stuff they want to do, but it's just a difficult balancing act, isn't it? In terms of
I guess that's on the gravel side. I mean, certainly in the road side, we hear that a lot from brands. As part of my job, I speak to a lot of brand engineers and people that are at the coalface of designing these bikes, and so much is they're tied so much to the UCI rules.
So there's actually less of that on the gravel side, right? There's probably more creativity. They can do more from an engineering side, right?
Absolutely, they can. Yeah, there's to the best of my knowledge, the rules governing gravel bikes are pretty relaxed. I'm sure the UCI will soon get onto that and stick some more stringent restrictions in place if there are going to be more and more sort of events. But at the moment, I mean, a gravel bike is what you make it. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we've actually had an engineer on here talking about the frustrations of the UCI regulations at times. But while they're necessary, it's frustrating if you want to be creative as an engineer, I think, on the road side.
Definitely.
So what else can you tell us a little bit more about upcoming issues? So you've got the autumn one coming out in September, is that right?
Yeah, so next issue is well underway now. Obviously, we've been a little bit restricted with the sort of foreign stuff that we could do. And as I kind of was going to touch on earlier on when we were talking about having sort of a backlog of content for off-road, we don't have that right now because we're a bit more hands-off with that title because it's so new. So this summer would have been a summer where we would have been off as a team creating amazing ride content and going to events and covering all of that, which we haven't been able to do, obviously. So we'll need to be a little bit more creative with what comes out in the autumn issue, but it will still be a fantastic issue for sure. Product-wise, there's just too much. There's too many good bikes and products coming out in the gravel sector at the moment. I could fill another 3 magazines with what we've got on offer at the minute. So product-wise, it's going to be a banger of an issue. Loads of cool stuff, including, as I said, the bike that's sitting close to me right now, that 9er MCR 9 RDO, which is that super divisive full sus gravel bike. So I'll be talking.
Yeah, and you've had a chance to have a ride of that. What are you allowed to tell us your views?
Well, I won't give too many spoilers away, but if I was going to classify that bike, I think it's going to be a very acquired taste. It's going to suit a certain type of rider, and that may or may not be me. I won't tell you which way I'm going, but that's. I love it. I love what they've done with it. And as I said a couple of times earlier, I would certainly applaud them for being the first brand to go, you know what, we can go all in with this and do a proper full sus gravel bike. Great. I love to see that. But I think it's going to be an acquired taste, that one.
Oh, good. Well, I look forward to reading that. And how can everyone find, obviously you'll give us all the links and stuff for people if they want to subscribe to the magazine.
Yep.
Can you send us all that? Let us know all the details.
Yeah. I mean, subscriptions are all done through cyclist.co.uk, and then we have /shop, which I think that's can all be done through there. Certainly off-road at the moment there isn't a subscription option for off-road because it's still quite new. So as that builds into more of its own brand, then there will be an opportunity to subscribe to off-road as well.
So it's just a case of buying it when it comes out online. Is that correct?
Yeah, or it's now available in the newsstand. So we delayed the on-sale date for the current one because of lockdown. A lot of our sales obviously happen in high street shops like WH Smith's and in airports and things like that, which weren't going to happen clearly. So that's actually launched just yesterday. In fact, issue 3 went on the newsstand officially. So that's now out on the high street and in supermarkets and so on. But yes, you can buy it directly through the shop online as well.
Excellent. I was just thinking that people probably couldn't get it from the shops and stuff. So, okay, if you're out there, you should be able to find a copy. But if not, and you ship globally as well for people listening that want to get their hands on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's probably the easier option actually, because you can literally just buy it and it will turn up the next day to your door or whatever. So it's that's hassle-free way of buying the mag.
Yeah, very good. And just quickly, obviously you tried in a couple of bikes there. You mentioned what's your sort of personal bike of choice at the moment? What are you riding yourself? Talk us through it.
Road or gravel?
Well, both. Let's go with road. What are you riding on the road at the moment?
Well, in terms of test bikes, what I've just finished testing for the last issue of Cyclist was actually a Festka, which is a Czech carbon brand, which is phenomenally kind of high tech with the way they think about creating their frames. Really, really cool bike. So yeah, you'll be able to read about my thoughts on the Festka Spectre, which is probably the most colourful bike I've seen in a long, long time. The paint job is inspired by the ski wear of the kind of early 90s era.
Oh, right.
Give you some clues as to what that might look like.
Brilliant.
In terms of other bikes at the moment, the brand new Trek Amonda has just landed with me. So that's my current test bike for this upcoming issue on the cyclist side of things. That's a really exciting bike because the Amonda was obviously, Trek launched that bike with one goal in mind, and that was to be the lightest production road bike on the market. And they succeeded with that when it first launched, which I think was way back in 2013 now. But this is sort of the third generation of that bike now. So brand new and gone in the way that you might expect. So everything's weight's come down, stiffer, but more aero as well. So all those kind of modern trends that we're seeing, Trek has applied in its own way, slightly differently to some. So yeah, that's an exciting bike. I'm looking forward to spending some good miles on. My own bike, well, it's a few years old now, but certainly the traditional looking Cannondale Super 6 Evo is a real personal favourite of mine. It's a bike which I've always used as almost like my benchmark.
Yeah.
A good bike, such a well-respected bike. And I think that there's hardly a cycling journalist I've ever met that could say much bad about that bike. And so that's kind of become my own go-to. And actually,
which edition is that? Is that the one where they've dropped the seat stays or the seat stays?
Mine's a slightly earlier generation than that. So the more looking, sort of horizontal top tube, more round tubes, that kind of thing. But that's a personal favourite of mine. That'll be a bike that I find very hard to ever give up.
Yeah, I'll absolutely love that bike. I've actually got that generation CAD 12 as well, which I'm a big fan of as well. It's a lovely bike, which is good. And you mentioned some of the places you've been to with work, Morocco and Boulder, but on a personal level, where are your favourite places to go ride the bike?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky to live in a beautiful part of England. So if I need to get a fix of decent riding, I can get that almost from my doorstep these days. But I think, if I had to pick one place, I think it would probably be somewhere like Santa Cruz, just because of the sheer variety that you can get out there. Like the times I've been there and ridden there, probably half a dozen times now for various different features over the years. And again, that's another place which you leave and you just think, wow, what a place to live. That would be amazing. Just so much, so varied. The road riding out there is to die for. The gravel riding out there is to die for. Mountain biking out there is amazing as well. So.
And are you still riding a bit of everything? You're still doing a bit of mountain biking as well? And
yeah, I kind of had a little bit of a comeback when I turned 40. I stopped racing elite, I think in 2012, and then 2016 it was going to be my 40th that year. So I decided to have a little race as a vet and did that for a few years. So I still dabble with the mountain bikes, although definitely not competitively now. I've got a little daughter, and that's been a game changer. So another reason to hang up the racing wheels for a while. But
not complete training, is it?
No, it is fantastic, but time consuming. I'm not
sleep consuming.
Turn up and make up the numbers. I think that's my problem. I do like to do things and go all in. So if I'm not able to do that, then I'm better off just not doing it at all. So yeah, just ride for fun now and enjoy riding a road bike for work and for pleasure. And yeah, gravel bike, whatever. I'll take whatever comes, and if it's got an engine and I get to do that as well, then all good.
Very good. Anything with two wheels, you're all over it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, awesome, excellent. Look, thank you so much for taking the time. Just with regards to cyclists, that's obviously they can subscribe online with that. We'll put the notes in. You've got a podcast now as well as a business, haven't you?
We have, yes. Cyclist just recently launched its own podcast, so we've got that up and running now. That's good. That's a couple of my colleagues, James Spender and Joe Robinson. Yeah, those guys they're entertaining, definitely.
Give us a quick plotted overview of the podcast. What's it called? Is it the Cyclist Magazine podcast or
Cyclist Magazine? Yeah, and that's how you
can just search that.
Yeah, don't search.
And are they talking tech or are they talking? What are they talking through? Talk us through the sort of general subjects on the podcast.
They are talking pretty much anything and everything. Those guys have got, Joe has got an encyclopedic knowledge bike racing. He's the kind of guy, you said, who came 7th on stage 14 of the 1994 Tour de France. He'd probably tell you. He's got this crazy encyclopedic knowledge of everything that's going on within the teams. He knows who's where and what. And yeah, so he's really, really good to talk about on the racing side of things. And James as well really kind of knows his history. And yeah, they've got some good guests on the show as well. I can't think who's this current upcoming guest on the next issue. Sorry, I'll have to come back to you on that one. But no, those guys are doing a great job, especially because they've done it all through lockdown. So this has been a venture that they've taken on without even being able to be in the same room. It's all been done remotely, so fair play.
Which is the challenge I can definitely relate to. But definitely. And you've been putting more and more content onto YouTube as well. You'll send us for the link for that. What kind of stuff can people look out for on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean that's just the nature of the sort of changing world that we're in now. A lot of people go to YouTube to search for content, so we're just trying to bolster that side of our brand as well. And it's an important area for us. And so you'll see a lot of tech stuff going up on the YouTube channel now, and also from my side, obviously with my mechanical background, we felt that it was good to do some maintenance stuff up there as well. A lot of the things I've learned through many years of being a sort of, I say, GB level mechanic. Yeah, there's a few tricks of the trade I can show people on the YouTube channel. And so, we'll be pushing more and more of that content ongoing now.
Superb. Great. Well, we'll get all the links in the show notes for this show as well. Is there anything else? Have I missed anything? Anything exciting you can tell us? Any previews or?
What's super exciting at the moment? I don't know. No, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff there. I don't think there's too much we're missing. No.
It's difficult on the cyclist side. I mean, from a racing perspective, that must have been tough. What are your views on the e-racing side? Have you been watching any of it or following any of it? Or
I haven't got too much into that, if I'm honest. I'm watching from a distance. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I would say personally, I really see the value in e-racing.
So you do or you don't?
I do, yeah, absolutely. Given the opportunity of not sort of naming brands here, but I'll use the Z word. If I was to ride on Zwift, I would definitely choose to do a race over just riding around for the sake of it. I mean, that's just, again, horses for courses. But my mentality is very much a competitive one. So if I've got the opportunity to enter in an e-race and go up against a bunch of guys, even if it's on a screen, I'd choose that over just riding around, for the sake of it. So, that's definitely something I understand, and I value that and have done that. I've done quite a few Zwift races myself now. But in terms of as a sport going forward, I mean, there's lots it could achieve, but I'm not sure it's the most exhilarating thing to watch as a spectator.
No, I agree, and it's interesting. Someone mentioned to me the other day, but bizarrely, I agree, it's not the most exhilarating to watch. But ironically, from a financial model, it could make more sense than real road racing, right? I mean, you could probably balance it so it does make sense. So that's the crazy state of the sport, I suppose, at the moment. From on the road side, it's a difficult time for road cycling.
It is, but I don't think that you could ever replace the atmosphere of that real life event. I mean, you've got to remember that people will queue or stand at the roadside for most of a day just to get a 1 minute glimpse of the Tour de France peloton swooshing past. And that's the kind of passion that people will put behind going to watch a real life event. And they want to see the riders in blood and sweat in their eyeballs as they go past, and they want to almost be able to reach out and touch their heroes. And you lose all of that as soon as you put it onto a computer screen. And that's the thing that I just don't think you can ever replace. And, when they were talking about the Tour de France being a spectatorless event this year, I was thinking, well, you can't
work.
France without spectators. It doesn't work. So much of that event is the atmosphere and the entourage that goes with it.
It's almost the off the bike stuff. Yeah, it's the whole circus of it all, isn't it? It's a massive. I mean, it's beyond a sporting event for France, isn't it? It's just a huge occasion every year.
Yeah, and you could say the same for the classics. Those events.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a classic, but I mean, people will, as I said before, they'll stand for 7 or 8 hours at the roadside to wait just to get their glimpse of the riders coming past on the cobbles or whatever, just to have that premium spot. And they'll have the whole family will be there. There'll be a picnic, and it's a huge occasion. Something that you could never ever replicate that if you can't see it for real. It just wouldn't work on a computer screen.
No, exactly. And you mentioned obviously you've raced as well. To race in events like that must be exhilarating with the crowds there, but also it helps grow the sport, right? To see your idols racing, having idols helps grow the sport for the younger generations. I think that's the key thing. Definitely,
yeah, absolutely. You need those heroes to grow up with, and you're right. You're not going to have idols, I don't think, through watching them race on a computer.
No, or maybe that's the weird world we're moving towards, just generally as a whole. But hey, you never know in 2020. Anything's possible.
Anything is possible, indeed. Never say never, but let's hope that's not the case. Yeah.
Right, good. Stu, look, I've taken up loads of your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. It's been a fantastic insight into you, and stay in touch, won't you? Please do keep us in the loop in terms of what's going on at Cyclist, both on your side and the traditional road side as well. And we'll catch up very soon, no doubt.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Jules. And yeah, it's not often I get to rattle my gums for so long talking about myself. So...
All right, mate. You take care of yourself, and we'll catch up very soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And more importantly, don't forget to download the Unfound app and join cyclists from around the world on the Hub. We'll see you on there.